Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Amicable Divorce Network podcast. My name is Tracy Moore-Grant, and I am the founder of the Amicable Divorce Network and the host of the Amicable Divorce Network podcast. If you have been following us and listening, you know that season 2 of the podcast is dedicated to our new book, Divorce Amicably, Your Roadmap to Resolution. And in this book, we go step by step through the entire divorce process, from should you file divorce all the way to starting dating again and moving on. And we are smack dab in the middle of the book with chapter 32. And today I am joined by Tori Owens, and we are going to be discussing personality disorders, which was just one chapter in the book and could probably be a whole book on its own. But it's a very important topic because we see this rear its ugly head often in divorce situations. Tori, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your experience in dealing with personality disorders.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here, Tracy Ann. I'm a full-time therapist in North Georgia, Dahlonega, Georgia. I have been connected with a domestic violence shelter for about 20 years prior to being a full-time therapist. And now I'm dealing with trauma therapy more often than not. In that practice, but I also am a parent coordinator and co-parent counselor. And so many times some of my co-parents in that setting, whether it's parent coordination or co-parenting counseling, one or both parents are sometimes manifesting some of these symptoms that might fall into personality disorders.
Yes.
So in working with people who have dealt with abusers, but also with co-parents, I'm seeing some signs of potential personality disorders. Yes.
And so I think it's important, if you think your spouse, co-parent has a personality disorder, that you do enlist the assistance of somebody that's properly trained.
Yes.
For these. So, often, lawyers, I hope, are famous for saying, like, this is not my area of expertise. And so bringing in a mental health professional like Tori, who has background and training in mental health and working with individuals is important to move forward and make progress in these situations.
Yes, I think that's a great point. Yes.
So let's talk just very first. How would you define personality disorder versus mental health disorder?
Okay. So a mental health disorder in general, we've got a big, somewhere here, I have a DSM, which is our diagnostic manual when you're dealing with therapies, psychiatry, all of those things. All of those disorders in there are mental health disorders. So it's this broad category of that something regarding my cognitive, emotional, psychological, well-being is interfering with life. Right? And I am not okay. So that's how we get a mental health disorder kind of summed up. You have to have a set of symptoms interfering with life that's pervasive and it's there for a chunk of time, right? It's not just a moment that you're having. A personality disorder is one of the subsets of mental health disorders. And how I would define a personality disorder is something like, if I was getting in my car and I'm looking through the windshield, most people are aware they're getting in their car and they're looking through a particular filter windshield. People with personality disorders do not know that there is a windshield there, that there's a particular set of related to experience, related to traumas you've been through, good things that have happened that are impacting that filter and how it's built. So you never get out from behind that windshield, which means you cannot understand where someone else is coming from very well.
Gotcha.
Or if at all.
Yes.
Yes, which is where we get that term empathy, right?
Right.
You cannot put yourself in someone else's shoes because you think everyone is looking at the world through this one lens. That's kind of personality disorder summed up. Yeah.
And so you touched on this a little bit, but I know in having your training and going through many of those, with you, that sometimes personality disorders are associated with trauma.
Yes.
And not necessarily something you're born with.
Correct. Yes.
And so let's touch on what is a trauma, first of all. Let's just talk about that. That's a big term.
It is a big term, and we talk about it a lot, but what it means and how I understand it is, and how I talk about it with others is, it can be something that's happened to you that has been devastating in some way, right? That has kind of ripped you out of your normal way of being, right? Emotionally, physically, mentally, all of the things. It can also be things that you did not receive. And we sometimes leave that part out.
Okay.
And that's where we get the term neglect, is that, but it's more than that. You could have grown up in what everyone, and even you, it's seemingly good childhood and everything else. But if you were not seen and heard in the way that you needed to be seen and heard, that could also be traumatic, right?
Okay.
And so we don't want to compare traumas across the board, because we don't know from person to person what's going to register as a trauma. So you could have 3 kids in a family where a family goes through a divorce. It's handled really well. Like, they're doing everything they can to make sure these kids are okay and all this stuff. You still could have a child of those 3 who it registers as a trauma for them because of how they're built, right? Mentally, physically, all of it. And the other 2 don't experience it that way. So we just don't know. There's this kind of unknown where we're not quite sure why it registers for some a particular way and others. Now, there are some obvious traumas, like we think of physical abuse, emotional abuse, all of the things, right? Sexual abuse. Obviously, that's going to be traumatic. But some of these other things, we may not quite know how it's going to land.
I mean, everybody's wired differently. Every child is, you know, you're built with different blocks. And so the same situation can impact people, children very differently. And so that's just important to know. If this child is okay, this child may not be. And it could be the same set of circumstances. And often I think what you've touched on is that this can invoke a fight or flight response.
Yes. So our brain is built to keep us alive 24/7. Everything it does 24/7 is to keep us here and functioning. So it will go to great lengths to protect us. So I'm going to go through the brain a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, please.
Yeah. So our brain develops from, and crazy hair today, back to the front, right? So our brain, when we're born, everything we need is back here in this part of our brain, the oldest part of our brain, to keep us alive. Breathing, heart rate, temperature, whether or not you have to go to the bathroom, if you're hungry, all of the things that regulate everything behind the scenes is back here. Our brain then develops from the back to the front. This is the longest to develop, 25, 26. When you add in neurodivergence, and what I mean by that is anything connected to like ADHD, autism spectrum, any of those, that's going to create a delay in this development. So it's going to push it more towards 30. Which is mind-boggling to think about, right?
People sometimes have multiple kids by 30.
It's so true, but it also explains, I think, a lot of times some of our choices and decisions in our 20s. And if we look back on our life and go, oh, wow, I was not working with a fully formed prefrontal cortex here. That explains so much. This is about decision-making, rational thinking, critical thinking skills, all of that stuff, right? So here's what happens with fight or flight. This part separates into 2 distinct systems. This is the autonomic system, is housed back here, goes down the spine. You've got 2 systems, parasympathetic, sympathetic. Basically, rest and digest, fight or flight. Now, we hang out in the middle. And then we go back and forth between these 2 systems, and we're supposed to do that pretty fluidly, right? So the example that I give is, I'm so not into snakes. If I walk out here and I see a copperhead, because it's snake season now, and I walk out here and see a copperhead, I'm going to run and scream, guaranteed. And I don't run and scream. I don't do either one of those, but I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Because this kicks into fight or flight. It moves me from this middle way into fight or flight mode. And then a lot of things happen in my body, which means this part shuts down. Rational, critical thinking skills shut down. Increased heart rate, increased breath rate, digestion shuts down, sleep shuts down, reproduction shuts down. Right? Now, I'm supposed to go into that pretty quickly and come back out. So when I run and scream, about 10 seconds later, 20 seconds later, I may return to baseline once my heart rate calms down and everything else, and I'm good to go for the rest of the day, right? What happens with traumas, interestingly enough, is sometimes the trauma can be so big, or there can be back-to-back-to-back traumas that are happening. And by this, I mean life or death situations where your brain is interpreting this as a critical, severe, serious moment. Which can encompass all these things we talked about earlier about trauma. it's going to boot me in there into fight or flight mode. But if I have back-to-back issues and traumas that have happened, right, I'm going to keep going into the fight or flight mode.
Right.
And what may happen over time is it kind of, and this is not a technical term, this is going to booger up the system. And the brain is going to get confused about where it needs to be. And so it's going to stay stuck in fight or flight mode all the time, which in essence is what we have with PTSD. Right. And anxiety and all the stuff is my body's stuck over here. My brain believes I need to stay on high alert all the time.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah.
And all of this can cause, exacerbate. You tell me what the answer is. They're personality disorders. So we have sort of the trauma, the fight or flight response, and then we carry on to actual personality disorders.
Yeah, I think that we all have ways that we respond to trauma, and we respond to trauma in different ways depending on the situation, depending on who's around us, and depending on our experience up to that point, coupled with our genetics, right?
Yeah.
So how I might behave with my family if a bear comes up might be really super different, right? Than how I might behave. Well, let me say it this way. If I'm by myself with a bear, I'm going to behave differently than if I'm in my house and somebody breaks into my house with my family there, right? I'm going to come out completely different.
Yeah.
That's how trauma works. We have all these different responses that are magnificent to keep us safe. Now, if I get stuck in a mode where I'm always having to be in fight mode, for example, and I grow up and I'm this little kid, and every time I turn around, like one example I have is when I worked in the shelter, I would have these little fellas, and sometimes it was typically boys, but sometimes it would be girls who would step in between mom and dad when dad was coming after mom. And in this case, that was what was happening. Dad was coming after mom. It can be the reverse. It can be mom going after dad, right? And I would have these little people trying to get in between mom and dad to stop dad from hurting mom. Now, if that happens enough time, and you're 4 years old, and you're 5 years old, and you're staying in fight mode constantly to protect mom, you might go out in the world and begin to stay in fight mode all the time.
Yeah.
You might encounter everyone as a danger at that point because you're just staying in it 24/7. There is no coming down from and resting from that mode when you are in it all the time, having to be on high alert. So it becomes a way of interacting with the outside world. And as you get older, you stay in that mode. You can't get out of it, right? So it becomes this hardened response that was formerly very effective and needed, but then it typically becomes ineffective and unnecessary, and that's kind of how we get those personality disorders. Is it's not really benefiting you a lot when you get to that, and you're staying in that mode and doing this with everyone.
So the way that you're wired has been changed by trauma.
It has been. Yeah. It sure has.
And so the way that you respond to that, and then it just becomes more of a daily reaction, just how you are, because then you're just like sort of rewired from this.
You are. And that's the thing that I think is so important to remember. What trauma does is it does rewire us. It rewires our brain. It changes us. Thank goodness there are things we can do to rewire, right? Which is fantastic. Therapy is one of those. There are other things you can do, but yes, it will change who you are.
I may throw you for a loop in asking this,
Go
but
for it.
I've been hearing more and more as a family law professional about ketamine therapy being used to rewire people. Do you have any information on that?
I do not have a lot of thoughts on that because I don't know much about that. But I have also encountered people who have gone through that ketamine therapy and they have found it quite effective.
Okay.
So I think it can be when monitored and in an environment that is medically monitored, and that you can experience, I think, an immediate rewiring. Now, I think the part I would add into that is, yes, it's going to rewire your brain, but there might still be a tendency when presented with familiar situations that are traumatic, right? And you get triggered. I'm not sure what might happen without some work around that.
Right. And you're talking about talk therapy.
Yes, or any other therapy that works for you. There are all kinds of therapies, right? That I think you might have to get ready for that moment and be prepared. Yes.
Yeah. What about medication for these types of situations?
Typically, medication is not used in terms of personality disorders. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. That not effective except for borderline personality disorder There is a component of dissociation, depression that happens, and serotonin, addressing serotonin in their SSRIs can help with that. And what I have seen is that it kind of opens up this space. Now, we didn't go through the four in the book. It's there. The four main types are antisocial.
No, I wanted to touch on that.
Yes.
So go ahead. And
yes.
so when we're talking about personality disorders, let's use the terms. What are their names and what are they? Let's go through it.
Totally. So there are three clusters. We're focused on cluster B because the symptoms manifest in relationships. They just do. And so when we get with cluster B, we're dealing with antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, histrionic, and then the last one is narcissistic. So with those four, 1 and 2, the first and the second one, antisocial and borderline, have a pretty 0 to 100, no lead up to anger. Like there's a volatility there, 0 to 100 in a nanosecond. Like everything seems fine. And then you turn around or say something and suddenly the person is so angry and volatile in a way that doesn't match the moment in particular, right? Now, SSRIs sometimes can help widen that space in between the 0 to 100 and give the person time to pause, right? So that's the one thing that I know in terms of medication can sometimes help.
And am I correct? The 0 to 100 is the fight or flight response that came from the trauma.
It's straight up fight mode. Yeah.
And
just straight up.
The other two, now you touched on one of the most popular personality disorders. So the final two are histrionic and narcissistic. Let's touch on histrionic. What does that look like?
Histrionic is attention seeking. They want all the attention. They want everything directed towards them. And they truly do not know what to do if they're not the center of attention everywhere they go. And so they will go to great lengths to get the attention back on them, even negative attention. So they're going to do everything they can to redirect everyone's attention back to themselves. Yes. So that can take the form of a lot of different things. Sometimes it's focused on looks. So there could be a sexual provocativeness in terms of the attention. But mostly with histrionic, what I've found is that they're really an energy drain, sadly, right? Because they are pulling on everyone. And we can see the roots of that in childhood and what they might have gone through or what they might have experienced that would lead to this, because that need for validation over and over and over again. It's quite sad.
The final personality disorder is narcissistic, which we're seeing everywhere these days is sort of the hot button word. So what is it actually? And I additionally see where people talk about covert and overt narcissism and, some different variances there. Are those actual subsection diagnoses or, what does that all entail? So narcissism.
Yes, narcissism. Narcissism, what we think of it as that everything is about them, right? That how they interpret everything is about them. I think the proper interpretation is they have and I had a supervisor, his name was Jim Finley, and this is how he talked about it. He said, it's that you don't have a fully formed sense of self. So everything is about you because your identity is attached to everything outside of you. You don't have your own internal sense of self. And when I think of it in those terms, that is quite sad to me. It's horrible that you don't have this understanding of really who you are, a distinct sense of self. It's tragic. That's why, it can feel like selfishness. It can feel like like everything's about you, but it's so much more than that. They do not have an understanding of life unto themselves, right?
And so how does narcissism present itself? How can it be problematic in the family law arena? Coupled with, are there really as many narcissists out there as people think that there are?
I don't know. And I'm scared to think about that because what's fascinating, I don't know what's happening, but it feels like we have a lot more, doesn't it? And it just does. And I don't know. I also have a history background, so I have a master's in church history and theology, so history is really important to me. I wonder about America in general in terms of an individualistic society. And I wonder about what that means long term for us when we're not communally oriented. And are we producing more narcissists because? I don't know, but it's an interesting question. I think one day I'm going to do a deep dive into that and think about that. But I wonder. But I also think that we're not our best selves when we're in divorce, when we're in the middle of mediation, when we're in the middle of custody, all of the stuff, whether it's
And
with
that's anybody, personality
it's
disorder or not.
anybody.
Like we see people at their
Yes.
worst, most triggered,
Yes.
bad mood, situation.
Like this has to do with loss, with grief, with this process, with loss of who you think you are, self-identity, right? All of these things. Maybe your place in society, because you might lose a lot of things, right? Physical things. So I think we're seeing people not in their best moments. We're actually seeing them probably in their worst moments.
Yeah.
So people could present as falling into one of these and not necessarily be in the middle of it.
Yeah.
The other thing is that if you have active addiction, no matter what type of addiction that is, you can present as antisocial, which is the first one, even though that's not who you are outside of the addiction. So there are times where we totally can present it as this and we're not, right? So with narcissistic, in terms of the legal process, I think that there's a difficulty in negotiating. There would be a difficulty in compromising. There would be a difficulty in seeing anything from anyone else's perspective, including the children, right? In particular, it's about this person and not what's in the best interest of the children. So there are lots of ways that this could show up in mediation and all of that.
And I would say the person also thinks that they will charm, or the judge will, because they're always right, that the judge is going to just side with them because there's no other perspective that's possible.
Excellent point. Because if we go back to that understanding that personality disorders are, everyone sees the world the same exact way as me.
Yeah.
Right? Then that means I'm right all the time.
Yeah.
It means how can I possibly be wrong?
Yeah.
So it's not someone thinking, oh, this person could be right. I understand where they're coming from. I have my different viewpoint. But you know what? I think I'm right. Yeah. No, it's not that. It's they can't see anything outside of their viewpoint. Right. Nothing else gets on the table. Right. So going into the courtroom, they absolutely believe they're going to win, and everyone is going to go towards their way, because how could anybody be different?
Yeah. So do you know of anything that would, I guess, motivate a narcissist to resolve a case in mediation or in some other means, as opposed to just pushing it all the way to the judge on every single issue all the time? Which, in my experience, I know that I have dealt with probably like 3, crazy, high-level narcissists. They, I think, all tried to have me arrested as representing the other party.
Gosh.
They definitely stand out in my practice. Now, I would say there's probably lesser narcissists, just call them a-holes, don't know what they're diagnosed with, Yes. But 95% of cases do settle outside of court.
They do.
And so there has to be some sort of secret sauce here that would motivate them to resolve things. Could it be saving face? Is it money?
I think so. I think yes to both of those.
Okay.
Those could be possible ends, because I think the narcissist is caught up in ideal something, right? Success, beauty, love, money, brilliance. And things like moments, relationships are transactional. What can I gain from this? So if you can interpret things to what benefits you in this transaction, right? So if you think of mediation as a transactional process, I would translate everything to how this benefits that person.
Yeah.
Translate it all the time. Yeah. So if you're talking in terms of scheduling for the children, parenting time and everything, this person says, no, I should have, full custody, maybe talk about how it benefits that it be split, the time, right?
Yeah.
How does it benefit this other person job-wise, standing in the community, right?
Yeah.
How that person may look as a mother or father in the community, right?
And I would say let them come up with these solutions and ideas.
It's very good.
And build off of that, even if it's sort of retracting some of those things, but some tools like, well, we took your idea.
I love that.
Everybody loved your idea.
Yes. So you're stroking some ego there, and also it's their take on things. Love it.
So We could talk for 20 hours or more about
It's
personality
so
disorders.
so
Tori and I
true.
do this from time to time, and it's always very
It's
enlightening.
awesome.
But I think it's important for people to know that even if you're dealing with a narcissist or somebody else who presents a personality disorder, that those personalities and issues can be resolved outside of the court system. And
Yes.
it is always possible. 95% of cases do settle, although it seems like 95% of people are narcissists these days based on social media. So there's some
Yes.
sort of, something going on there. So when you're building your divorce team, do look for, people who have training and experience, and sometimes even ask those questions in a consult, and how do they deal with difficult personality? What is their experience? Some different things like that to see that you're building the right team. If you are looking at a mediator, parent coordinator, often having that person, and there's many professionals out there that do that and are mental health professionals like Tori, they would have elevated skill and knowledge to help with resolution.
Absolutely. And the other thing, if I could say this, is that there are people that I have worked with as a therapist who I think fall into this cluster or have those tendencies or symptoms. And you can have some of these symptoms here and there and not be fully diagnosable, right? And that doesn't really matter to me to pin that diagnosis on people I'm working with or talking about. And what I will say is, if you think that you might fall into this cluster, it's okay. It's okay. Get some help. Talk to a therapist, because the older you get, the more you might realize, wait a minute, I'm noticing a pattern here.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of broken relationships, and they're all hard. And if that's kind of the case, and you're kind of it kind of falls, you're the common denominator kind of a deal, like, reach out and get some help. It's okay. There's a reason. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you can get some skills and try to begin to understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And conversely, I think if you are the partner of one of these people, you don't need to focus your time and energy on getting a label assigned to them. That may never happen. It is better to work on how are you going to work with this person and how they present themselves, sort of like they're the rock and you're the water moving around it.
Perfect.
As opposed to trying to pin a label on that rock. Like, that is almost a futile effort with your time and money.
It is. And trying to get that person to get where you're coming from too, right? It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Tori, again, thank you very much. If people are listening to this and they want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to find you?
You can find me at toriowens.work, and I have a form there, submission, or you can email me at toriowens@mac.com.
Wonderful. And if you're driving and you can't capture that information, just save this episode and we will have it in the show notes. Tori, thank you very much for everything that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you.